This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. My guest today is Dr. Anthony Youn, and we are talking about plastic surgery, or we are talking about health and wellness and hair and your gut biome and alcohol and yoga, the whole science of well-being. Now, Dr. Youn starts as a plastic surgeon, and he has migrated. He has become very holistic. This is one of these fun, quick conversations. He had a patient he had to run to, so we didn't get a chance to talk for too long. But it is one of those inspirational and motivational conversations. Without any further delay from me, let's jump right into my chat today with Dr. Anthony Youn and talk about being younger for life. Here's where I want to jump in, Doc. I want to share a story with you. I'm a guy in my mid-50s, 55. I don't have any experience in your world. No procedures, no nothing other than braces when I was a kid, all that fun stuff. But I had an experience recently. I bumped into a friend. He's a Vietnamese American and he's 50. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you've lost some weight." We hadn't seen each other for a couple months. He said, "Oh, you lost some weight." And I said something about his hair. And I think I was trying to say that you have no gray, but I wasn't accusing of dying or anything. And I thought that's what he was hearing that I was saying. But then he looked at me, he said, "Oh no, I got my hair done a year ago." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh yeah, this is all got transplanted." And I looked at the man and I said, "My God, no one's going to ever know that you've had anything done to your hair unless you tell them." His hair looked amazing. It was one of those eye-opening moments where I think the world has radically changed. Now, we're going to talk about how you view plastic surgery, and going through your work, you probably prefer to have less surgery. There's so many other options and some different things to do, less invasive. But it was just one of those eye-openers for me. And I just thought as an opening salvo to share with you, it really made me realize, wow, things have really changed. And I think you would probably, and I want you to share this story, if you would share those first plastic surgery experiences and then to where you've migrated today. You're not the same guy that when you first started, are you?
No. So just to start, because you told your story, I find it funny because if you were to have had hair transplants back in the 90s, we call it now like doll hair, where they used to do hair transplants where we would transplant many hairs at one time. And like a doll's hair, you'd have these little sprouts of numerous hairs coming out in certain areas. Now hair transplant, you transplant literally 1 to 2 follicles at a time. And that's why it looks so natural, because literally it's 1 or 2 hairs that you transplant at a time. But it is extremely expensive, but it sounds like he had a good job. So yeah, I did my training. I went through completely traditional medical plastic surgery training. I did general surgery, I did trauma surgery, and I did a plastic surgery residency and then a fellowship out in Beverly Hills. And everything that I was taught really was that the idea of surgery is to cut is to cure. There's these sayings, to cut is to cure, or the only way to heal is with cold steel. So I was always taught through my training, and I believed in this for many years early in my practice, is that the pinnacle of success as a surgeon was you want to do the most operations that you can, and you want to do the biggest operations that you can. So in general surgery, the king of operations is the Whipple, and this is a 10-hour cancer operation that if you are so lucky when you're in residency or in practice to be able to do that, then you are very, very privileged. In plastic surgery, the pinnacle of the operations is probably the facelift, because people may trust any old doctor to do their liposuction, but if you're going to let them do your facelift, you're going to really do your homework and make sure that that's a really good doctor. And so for many years, I really focused on how many facelifts I had on my schedule, and the more facelifts I had, the better I felt about myself and the more successful I thought I was, until I had a terrible complication from a facelift. It was something that wasn't my fault, wasn't the patient's fault, just sometimes things happen in surgery. And that set my career off on a whole other course and leading to my new book and all that type of stuff.
this is not light reading. You cover every facet of essentially health and well-being and appearance. You really get into the nitty-gritty. I will add as one little side tangent when you said about the hair follicle procedure. This guy told me his was $5,000.
It could have been because of where he had it. If you have that done in the States, it really starts at about 10 to 15,000, unless you go to some bargain basement place.
Let me shift you back to the facelift point, though. Now that and I want you to talk more about the migration in your thinking, but I would think back in the day, as an American, I would think if I saw, it would generally be a lady, and I'd say, oh my gosh, what did she do to her face? It looks so unnatural. But these days, I'm surprised at how many women I might talk to, and I especially see this in Asia, whether it's coming from Korea or Thailand or Vietnam, very minor type procedures that I don't necessarily even recognize. It seems like people have become more sophisticated in the sense that they want to improve their appearance, but they don't want the signs of that improvement.
Yeah. And it used to be when I first started my practice back in 2004, we had surgery, we had some rudimentary lasers, and Botox had just starting to be widely used back then. Now we have so much more available to us. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is that the non-invasive options that we have, from newer style lasers to radiofrequency to ultrasound guided treatments to even all these different injectables, we can get a lot of the results that used to be you had to have surgery for in order to get, and now we can get that non-surgically. And it has really resulted in a massive boom in the plastic surgery industry over the last 20 years or so.
Speak to the aesthetics for a second. So let's say you have two individuals that you are going to assist, and one of those individuals keeps a generally healthy lifestyle. The other individual doesn't keep such a healthy lifestyle. Perhaps they've got way too much weight, but they want a similar procedure. Deep down, I'm sure the science is going to back this. The results are generally going to be better for the individual that is leading a more healthy lifestyle. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
You know where I'm going. I'll let you take the floor.
So really, even when we do surgery and we operate on patients, you can tell the patients that are leading a healthy lifestyle based off of how their tissues react actually to surgery. So in plastic surgery, when we operate on people, it's interesting because people who tend to live a healthier lifestyle, their tissues tend to respond better in the actual operating room. You may get less bleeding, the tissues are less friable, they are stronger, and patients tend to get better results. But what I've discovered when I had my patient who had that terrible complication, I started wondering, what am I doing with my career? Is this truly the right way to go? And I was always taught that what you want to do, the goal is to bring patients to the operating room. And what I finally realized after months and months of just really beating myself up over what happened with my patient is that the goal that I've had for many, many years and what I was taught in my training was wrong. And the goal should be, how do you keep people out of the operating room? So for years then, I dedicated myself to determining or to figuring out, how can I get people to look and feel the way that they want to feel and look without going under the knife? And I developed this process called autojuvenation, and it's using diet, basically what to eat, when to eat, supplements, skincare, and a plethora of non-invasive options to turn back the clock. And I figured out really that the vast, vast, vast majority of people out there who want to look and feel better about themselves, who want vibrant, healthy skin, they can get that without going to see a doctor. And it really comes down to focusing on those 5 things: what you eat, when you eat, supplements, skincare, and if you want to, adding non-invasive treatments.
So now that you go down this, what I would call holistic path, what is the reaction from peers? Here, okay, look, you're a doctor. My father's a doctor. There's the help people part of it. There's also, hey, this is a business too. So I would think that by you going down this direction, this path, having so many people that follow you, and you opening this up to a holistic thinking, there's got to be a lot of people that have gone down the plastic surgery path that are silently cursing under their breath about, oh, that guy Anthony, oh, why is he talking about this? Because doesn't this force a little bit of a directional change if you make it so holistic for the industry?
Yes, and there have been plastic surgeons who don't like me, They don't like what I put out there because it's a business. And just for example, breast implants are the number one most popular cosmetic surgery in the United States. And many years ago, I was one of the first plastic surgeons to go public and basically saying that I think that some women may actually get sick from their breast implants. So just as an example, this was something that has been dogma in plastic surgery for a long time, in that breast implants are safe. They don't make people sick. If people think their implants are making them sick, it's something else. And what has happened, though, over the last really 5 to 7 years is that social media has allowed women to come forward and tell their stories about how their implants they believe are making them sick. And then when they have implants removed, they seem to get better. I was always taught, once again, dogma is that the studies show that implants are completely safe and these stories are bogus. And it wasn't until I started really reading these patient stories and looking into research beyond the actual plastic surgery research, looking at papers written by rheumatologists and other types of physicians, that I started realizing that there are two sides to this story and that what I was taught about breast implants was not necessarily true. So I put that out there, and I had a good friend of mine who called me up and he said, "You got to drop this." He said, "People are talking and they're not happy with you." And my reply to this was, I don't care. I'm here to do what's best for my patients and for my followers and put the truth out there and my truth. And if people don't like it, then that's okay. They can rebut me if they want. But in the end, it's my job to be out there doing what I feel is best. So yes, there has definitely been pushback. There are some plastic surgeons who don't like me. Interestingly enough, up until my social media following exploded, I was on all of the top plastic surgeon lists and everything. And when you actually survey other plastic surgeons, so there are plastic surgeon lists of top plastic surgeons as voted by their peers. And I was on the vast majority of them. Well, once I go public on social media, I put stuff like this out there. I'm not on those anymore. They don't like me. Now, if you ask the public, that's a whole different story. I have more followers than any other plastic surgeon on social media, which is insane. And I don't get this. It's a funny thing. You help the public, but your peers may not be happy with it.
I don't know where this question is going to go exactly. It's a conversation I have with male friends often. And since we brought up breast implants, one of my favorite things, I work out a lot. I'm around a lot of ladies that are either in yoga or Pilates. And generally, I will find across Asia, less busty are the women. But I find, at least where I'm at right now, a lot of women are not necessarily going that path. It's more rare to see the breast implants. My view as a male has always been that aesthetically, most women look best with what they were born with. Now, that's a pretty controversial thing, and most women want to kick me in the ass if I open my mouth. They're like, "Hey, it's not your business, whatever." But speak to the idea, because I'm a guy that grew up seeing in the 80s and the 90s and the media images in America, and there was a lot of, and still even to this day, there's a lot of imagery that looks very fake. Open up the conversation a little bit to the artistic part of this, because some body shapes are just not designed to be the massive porn star look or something. But I think there is a way that, and I'm sure you're going to inform me in a second, but a way that where if women do want to go down this path, they can avoid that quote fake look.
I think that there are two groups of women patients that come to see me for breast implants. They're the group of women who have had children. They've never thought about having plastic surgery or implants. Then they have children, they breastfeed, or maybe they don't breastfeed. And they find that after having children, their breasts look very, very different than they did before having kids. So they may have been a C cup beforehand, and they always were a C cup, ever since they went through puberty and everything. And now they're an A cup and they're droopy and their chest is completely different. Those patients often will look to get what they had back, essentially. And nobody would typically fault them for it. It's just their body has changed through no fault of theirs. Just things happen after having kids. So they're looking to regain what they used to have. And oftentimes those are patients that you find out that they have implants. Because I have people who aren't even my patients, just random people that I'll be out and they'll come up and talk to me and they'll say, "Oh, I have breast implants." And I would have never expected that they did, because it just fits their body. They're nothing unexpected. And then there's the other group that are having implants because they do want to stand out. There are these trends that go through fashion, and there are trends that actually go through plastic surgery, which is difficult as a plastic surgeon, especially somebody who's so focused on natural options to turn back the clock, to deal with. We have trends that have gone, for example, really for the last 10 years, as the Kardashians have been so popular worldwide, One of the biggest operations, most fastest growing, has been BBL, which stands for Brazilian butt lift, which is injecting fat into the butt to make the butt much larger. So for many years, that was a huge trend. So a lot of people are getting this operation done. Well, lately, the Kardashians have gotten smaller. Their bodies have gotten more thinner. And there are people who accuse them of being on Ozempic and Wegovy, who knows? But those operations now are starting to decline because it's not so trendy anymore. And implants have done the same thing. They've gone through different trends where for a while it was bigger. Now the trend is to go smaller. The problem with plastic surgery and doing plastic surgery to follow trends is that these are permanent operations. You should not get a plastic surgery operation every 2 to 3 years because you want to follow a trend. And some of these changes that can happen in your body are permanent. You can't just expect that if you want to reverse the operation, get back to where you were 5 years ago, that's even possible. Oftentimes it is not.
This is why I like to have this conversation with you, is because I did not know the term BBL, but I saw my first BBL recently. And I just looked at this individual and I thought to myself, and I love the holistic angle that you're coming at, because I thought to myself, she doesn't realize how bad that looks. And she doesn't realize that if she would have gone an exercise route, she could have gotten her rear end to be in a great place, and it would have looked a lot more natural and a lot better than going down the direction of some unusual look. Maybe there's some part of this surgery, the BBL that you just described, that will look normal. But for me, I'm just like, wow. So I think that's an interesting point, that in your world, you go on the holistic path versus some of these odd surgeries.
And the problem with, let's say, a BBL surgery, and a lot of what we do in plastic surgery, is that unfortunately, plastic surgeons often will just look at the immediate result. How does it look now? How does it look 3 years from now? But they don't necessarily talk to the patient about how it may look 10 years from now. So if you inject a bunch of fat in your bottom and you like the shape of it today, how are you going to like it 10 or 20 years from now when that fat has dropped, when that trend is no longer popular? You can't just suck it out and expect that your butt's going to be in the same place that it was before. And unfortunately, plastic surgery can be very, very short-sighted. And a lot of doctors who are performing, the vast majority of plastic surgeons who I know, my colleagues, they do this because they want to help their patients. And that's their number one goal. But unfortunately, there are people in the field who just do it for money and for fame and for clout. And that's where it can become very difficult because patients can really suffer from it.
Let me jump you around a little bit in our limited time. I want to keep it at health issue that you describe also, inflammation. And you talked a little bit about in surgery, the different types of bodies in terms of, let's say, if someone's in shape, they're not in shape. But open up the floor to inflammation and getting people to understand, maybe even if they walk away with one basic understanding from this conversation, to then go down the rabbit hole of reading your book, perhaps, but one basic understanding of how, if they can appreciate the negative aspects of inflammation and things they can do.
There are 5 main causes that I focus on of aging of your skin. The first cause is nutrient depletion. So basically, our food is not as nutritious as it used to be. The second cause is collagen degradation. Our skin is composed about 70 to 8% collagen, and we lose about 1% of the thickness of it a year. So increasing the amount of protein that you eat can definitely help with that, including collagen supplements. Third cause of aging of the skin is inflammation, like you mentioned. Now, inflammation can be acute or it can be chronic. Acute inflammation can actually be a really good thing for our bodies. If, let's say, you get a cut, your body creates some acute inflammation around that cut to help heal it and to ward off infection. So in those cases, acute inflammation can be really good. It's chronic inflammation that can be very harmful to our bodies, especially long-term, and that can cause us to age more quickly than we want it to. And one of the main causes of chronic inflammation is eating too much sugar. Sugar causes chronic inflammation by creating chronic spikes of insulin. So when you eat sugar, your body secretes insulin to allow your muscles to take up that sugar. But when you get chronic insulin spikes, that creates chronic inflammation, and that can cause premature aging.
So that'd be a primary reason why alcohol is not helping aging. The sugar in alcohol.
Alcohol actually also is a toxin. So that also can really impact. The interesting thing with alcohol is that the one drink that probably supersedes it is red wine. So drinking 1 glass of red wine a day may actually be very helpful for you because it is so filled with healthy antioxidants. But when you drink more than 1 glass of red wine, or beer, any of these other types of drinks, hard liquor, then that definitely is a negative for your skin and for your overall aging. So there's inflammation. And then the next thing is oxidation, which is free radicals. A lot of that's found in fried food and overly processed foods. And then the final cause of aging of the skin is buildup of cellular waste. And this essentially is we need to give our bodies time where we don't actually eat. And it's a thing that we've learned, anti-aging scientists, over the last 5 to 10 years, is that giving our bodies time to not eat, it actually helps to increase a process we call autophagy, where our cells will actually clean themselves out and recycle used intracellular garbage, essentially, and keeps them functioning better.
You're speaking of intermittent fasting.
Yes. So what we find, a lot of people think, oh, intermittent fasting is great for weight loss and for feeling more energetic. But what a lot of people don't realize, intermittent fasting can be great for anti-aging. If I were to tell you, let's say, 2 things to take out of our talk today that will help you live longer and have your skin look better, it would be to ingest less sugar and to take time to try to intermittently fast. As long as you're not pregnant or nursing, or you don't have eating disorder issues or malnutrition problems, then those are 2 big things that can really help that a lot of people do not realize.
Let me bring it to lasers for a second. And I want you to give to the uninitiated out there, I'm guessing the ladies might know more than the guys know, but let's pretend it's an all-male audience, for example. Help a male audience to come into the understanding of what some of the laser options, and I guess we'd be talking more face perhaps, but some of the laser options that exist and what they do. I've got some understanding, but not participated yet, but I might after I talk to you. So the floor is yours.
So I mentioned earlier that acute inflammation can actually be beneficial. Most laser treatments, chemical peels, radiofrequency, most of these non-invasive skin rejuvenation treatments basically use some type of energy or technology to create heat in our deeper skin. Our skin, like I mentioned earlier, is made of collagen, 70 to 80% collagen. And as we get older, that collagen gets thinner and it starts to fall apart. When you actually heat the collagen to a certain temperature, it causes a collagen to actually become tighter. So all of these types of treatments, whether they're laser treatments or ultrasound or radiofrequency, all of these are made to basically cause acute inflammation by creating heat in that deeper skin. And by creating that heat, the collagen of the skin actually will get tighter. And that's going to cause your skin to get tighter. And that's why those work that way. So once again, looking at that acute inflammation being a good thing, chronic inflammation being a bad thing. Now, when you're talking about males, and I know a huge percentage of your audience is males, the number one thing that I hear from men that they wonder about is what they can do. And bringing this back to what we started earlier, talking about is hair. And you mentioned your friend had hair transplants. The interesting thing is a lot of people think, oh, my hair is getting thinner. My only option is hair transplants. And that is so not true. And one of the parts of my book that I actually put in very late in the game, we had almost had it done. And I thought, one thing I did not put is a chapter on hair and all the things that you can do non-invasively to thicken your hair, even if you've got significant thinning.
Let me pause you for 1 second. My entire audience has now moved closer to listen closer to this.
And this is something that I noticed myself. A couple of years ago, my wife's like, your hair is thinning. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So the first thing I recommend is to take a nutritional supplement. And there's certain nutritional supplements out there that are all-in-one. And the one I usually recommend is called Nutrafol. Nutrafol has a supplement specifically for men because a lot of hair loss can be based off of nutritional deficiencies. So starting by taking a hair loss supplement like Nutrafol is the first step for most men. Second thing I recommend would be to use a low-light laser treatment. Low-light laser therapy is basically cold lasers. And there are lasers that create heat, like the ones that burn your skin. And there are lasers that don't create heat, like a laser pointer. And there are actually helmets that are made. Some of them literally look like baseball caps. Others of them, like I use one called iRestore. It's a plastic helmet with literally hundreds of lasers on the inside. And the idea behind that is you wear it for about a half hour every other day. And those lasers will target your hair follicles. And the belief is that it imparts energy to your follicles and causes them to go into a growth phase. And there are many, many studies that show that these hair laser treatments really do help. So those are the first 2 things I would recommend. If you want to take it to the next level, then there is minoxidil, or you can use topical rosemary oil. If you don't mind using a pharmaceutical, minoxidil is super easy. You can buy that at most drugstores. Many years ago, it became non-prescription here in the United States. But there was a recent study that showed that rosemary oil, just topical rosemary oil, gets very much the same results as minoxidil, but with less irritation, skin irritation. So if you want to go completely natural, then actually rosemary oil is a really good option for you. And then the final thing would be to use a dermal stamper. There are dermal rollers that people use. There are little rollers with tiny pins on them that people roll over their face. But the problem with those is that the little pins will create tiny little holes, which you want, but they're very uneven. Now there are actually stampers that you can buy online that have tiny pins on them, usually a circular stamp, and you can stamp your scalp and then apply, let's say, the rosemary oil over it, and you get better penetration. And the actual stamping creates acute inflammation. That acute inflammation stimulates hair growth. So just some really easy things that you can do at home that definitely work. And I'm doing all of those for my hair myself.
But I have to admit, even though you say it's easy, and I agree, the things you talk about are easy, but there are a lot of processes and ideas and concepts that you lay out. If one wants to fight Father Time, it does take some effort. Hey, let me shift you into something in our limited time left. How in the world did you become so good at social media? What was the trigger? What got you started?
I know you do a lot of business on your podcast, so happy to chat about that. I actually went through a couple of phases in my career. I did a lot of TV for a good 10 years or so, where I did a lot of talk shows. For a while, I was the go-to plastic surgeon for all the talk shows, Rachel Ray, the doctors, Dr. Oz, and stuff like that. And then I started realizing that I was aging out in a way. And like an actor who for a while has all the roles and then somebody newer, younger, better looking comes along, I started finding out, geez, these shows are using other doctors now. So I pivoted at that point to social media. Now, when I pivoted was many years ago when Facebook was big. I got late on the Instagram bandwagon, and I was just creating content that I thought as a doctor I should create, educational videos, straightforward stuff. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, and I found myself in an empty office with 10 employees who I promised to pay and no income coming in. I started looking back at where my checks started coming from, and the biggest check I got was from Google, from my YouTube channel. And I started thinking, well, maybe if I create more content, that could help bring in some money so I can help pay my employees while they're sitting at home. Everybody's worried and everything. And at the same time, I had this feeling as a physician that I need to help. Now, I volunteered for my local hospital, but man, if they need a plastic surgeon during the pandemic, it's a big problem. You don't want me taking care of you if you're sick. So I thought, how am I going to help people? And I thought, I'm just going to create content to take people out of this scary time, even for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a couple minutes. And that in and of itself was a privilege. And so I started not worrying about what I looked like, what I was saying, and just created stuff that I thought was fun and entertaining and maybe even a bit educational. And that's when my content, everything exploded. When I stopped worrying about being the person I was supposed to be, and I was just myself.
Do you think the success, the good content, and then just the viral part, is that the trigger?
Yes. And part of it was I was early in TikTok. So I started TikTok in September of 2019. And I was one of the OGs, one of the early doctors on that app. I wasn't the first one, but I was one of the early ones. And I think being an early adopter was a big thing because it allowed me to learn how the app worked. That was at the time where I had plastic surgeons who were reporting me to our plastic surgery societies saying that he shouldn't be on this. This is for teenagers. And what are you doing? And people being very upset because whenever you're the trailblazer, people don't like it because you're doing something different. And people don't like when somebody does something different, especially when they become successful at it. So I persevered. Next thing you know, everything spilled over. And a lot of this was on the short form video. And I really got, I think, good at short form video and people really enjoyed it. I just stopped worrying. And sometimes you have videos that you're like, oh, this maybe, should I do it? It's a little controversial. There are times where I put a video out there and I think it's funny. And I always look at the comments initially. And if there's a few that are like, yeah, this is not good or this is offensive or whatever, then I will really think about it. And if it's like, yeah, you know what, this may offend some people, I have taken stuff down because the goal really for me is to bring positivity into the world. And sometimes humor can be taken the wrong way. And it's just that's the way culture is nowadays.
What I like, though, is having gone through your content, there are people out there that make promises and say this and say that. But I talk to a lot of different, very smart people on this show. So I've got a keen observation of content. And I can't find anything in your world, to me, that looks anything other than perfectly rational, direct, straightforward. Here's the data. Here's the science. Here are the options. meaning it's motivational. To me, it's inspirational. And again, we've not really had a chance to talk today about, for example, food as medicine, the idea of how movement triggers change. There's so many issues you talk about. But for me, when I look at the overall big picture of what you're putting out there, it's motivating. And that's half the battle. Can I trust this guy? Is this guy going the full direct path? And to me, it looks like it is. Maybe there's something hiding in the closet, but I don't think so. You look like a pretty straightforward guy.
By now, people would have pulled that out. In the end, it's unfortunately with plastic surgery, there's so many people who are doing things for clout. There's so many people buying followers on Instagram and people trying to pretend there's something that they're not. And really, in the end, I think I'm fortunate. I have a 2-year waiting list of patients to see me. So I don't have to go out there trying to advertise. So the reason why I put content out there and I write the books and stuff like that is because I truly have this desire to help people and to put the right information out there. It's such a blast when you hear people say, I followed some of your stuff and holy cow, my skin looks so much better. My gut feels better. I have so much more energy. And it's because of these minor changes that you recommended. That means so much more to me to hear stuff like that than when I do a facelift and somebody's like, oh, my face looks so much better afterwards. That I get a lot of satisfaction from. But it's so much, in some ways, more satisfactory when people do this themselves and they find that they don't have to put themselves under the knife and that risk of complications and all of that. So for me, I think a world where we have less plastic surgery, but more people who are so happy with their appearance. When you are so happy with your appearance naturally, it means that you're healthier too. And all of that is a net positive.
The book, Younger for Life, Feel Great and Look Your Best with the New Science of Autojuvenation. Dr. Anthony, where can we send people? Where's the best place? There are books on Amazon, all that kind of stuff. Is there a best website to come check you out? TikTok, for you folks out there that are not on TikTok. But beyond TikTok, is there another place you might want to send people to?
Yeah, the best place would be my website is autojuvenation.com. Autojuvenation.com, basically, it's the book website. If you do buy the book, we do have a ton of free gifts, including a companion recipe book. We give you a gift certificate for the cost of the actual hardcover book as well. A lot of different things there. I would encourage people to check out autojuvenation.com. And if you're going to get my book, get some free gifts while you're at it. Might as well.
Doctor, I have to say, just as a quick observation going out, one of the reasons you're successful, it's the radio voice.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I really appreciate it. I try. I've had voice lessons a long time ago when I was a singer, but that was a long time ago.
Well, listen, you take care. I know you got a patient. Have fun.
Thank you very much.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.